Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. Um, I was curious today to chat about, I think, two things. I think the first was that I'm realizing that putting for the community discussions themselves, I want to talk about, should we have like a specific topic that we put out ahead of time, or even with some like suggested reading materials or something like that. Um, because I remembered, I was putting this one together, and partially this is on me because I forgot to put something out at the end of last week, as a reminder. But I'm remembering that one of the piece of feedback we got uh, from our previous working streams was that people don't necessarily like to do meetings just to do meetings, right? I know this is intended as more kind of like a community space than just a regular meeting. But I was thinking about if we should, do something, yeah, have like specific discussion topics we send out ahead of time, or if people like to just kind of be able to come and share what they're working on more free form. Um, yeah, let's start with that. I'm curious what y'all think about that.
Readings would be nice. I've seen very little in the way of good readings in this area of study.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's one of the things we've been thinking about as as we I'm still finishing up the symposium report because I've had a lot of family stuff happen this month, last month or two, that slowed it down. But um after that, I was thinking about, yeah, doing something along the lines of, hey, here's the a news blast of like the the articles and the research papers that have been published over the last month or two, and um be able to bring those up and kind of discuss them directly. Because I think that could be a fun thing to do, is just like have everybody kind of stay current on what's going on. Put that on our research network.
I like that idea. And one group of researchers I belong to um, is that we have the authors come in and talk. We take one article and they can talk about it too, and just 10, 15 minutes explain what they were doing, if we can reach the
Yeah,
writers.
yeah. I want to be wary of over planning it because we're still doing our monthly research seminars. Like this month, for those who were able to attend, we had Momona Yamagami talking about XR input accessibility. And so that was a fun presentation. And so I'm careful of making it too much into just like a two of those a month, because that'd be a lot. Um, but yeah, no, I think certainly of inviting the author, if we just want to have a mindful discussion, that could be fun.
But
And
I
then we are
also
all do.
leave it
Oh, go
open
ahead.
to other topics as come up too.
Hmm.
And I don't know about you guys. This stuff. I work in health information technology. There's like changes every day coming out of the government right now. I don't know if you're looking at those at all.
And how many of them are inspired by science?
How do you define science? Okay.
Oh boy.
Mm.
Um, Starts to get into dangerous territory. I have some family that's vaccine deniers, and it's like, but we don't. We science can be a tricky topic sometimes. Um, but yeah, no, I was just before this, I was looking at this one. I thought we might chat a little bit about, as our primary schools ready for immersive virtual reality resistance among stakeholders. It's a thing. It just came out, this year, something in the last couple of months, talking about, what are for educators, what are the draws and fears about VR. Because I've been getting a lot of talk lately about. I was just talking to somebody who advises community college policy, and they're trying to advise about VR. And it's one of those things where if you do it right, yeah, it could be, you get a few headsets, you could get a really big impact. And you do it wrong, you spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tech, and then nobody uses it. And it sits gathering dust in a corner somewhere. And so trying to differentiate between right and wrong when it comes to the software and the rollout and things like that um, is I think of growing interest as schools are starting to kind of look more at it.
Well, the funny thing is, this is Jesse. It seemed like a few years ago there was a lot more interest in VR in education and different things. Even a couple of little conferences that I went to had sessions on using, like Google Cardboard or Gear VR, those types of things. But like, I haven't heard much of hardly anything. I remember even in like one of the Oculus keynotes they had, I was actually looking forward to, they were supposed to start some sort of a educational, I don't know, not a separate store, but like a educational VR initiative that I don't think ever went anywhere. And I think there's just not really a lot, like you have a couple of passive experiences or, light educational things in the meta store, but like there's not a lot there. And I don't really hear as many people talking about VR development the way they were, let's say, 5 years ago.
Uh, I thought Meta just launched a big thing of Meta for education recently.
Oh,
Because
did
I
they?
know last year I was talking with I did a presentation at ImmerseCon, which is this company that does language learning in social VR, basically. And they had a whole bunch of talks, including I think it was like the head of Meta for Education talking about how they were doing some big yeah, there's fireside chat with Meta's education team.
Hmm.
Matthew Sanders, education and VR director at Meta. I'll have to go back and see what they were actually proposing, but I think
Yeah,
a
I'm
lot of it
wondering,
was okay.
are these things that were geared toward like schools specifically or just like the public in general? Because like I think like as far as how immersive VR can be, that's one thing that I found to be really interesting. Like, yeah, games are fun and everything, but some of my favorite experiences in VR so far have really been, like interactively walking around a space or learning about something or interacting with, whether it's a piece of history or technology or something like that. And I would love to see more of that just come to, the general market because I find it fascinating.
Where are you located, Jesse?
Minnesota.
Okay. I'm half-time in Portland, Oregon, half-time in New York City. It's a confusing life, but I'm bi-coastal, really bi-coastal. In Portland, we just actually had an XR VR film festival, and they had headsets for children to use and to get in to get them excited about it. Also,
Cool.
Our Portland Community College uses it in teaching auto mechanics, and I mean it's Portland though, maybe that's why. But they're really getting trying to get that going there.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
my
Go ahead,
only
Dan.
experience, sorry, I just put it into the chat, is a sort of a online virtual tour of our MRI scanner, which I would like to uh, extend to be, to actually use 3D modeling, etc. But this is just sort of accessible to everybody, and we intend to use it for asynchronous teaching instead of having to go to the research scanner and schedule time and that kind of thing, which is expensive. So people can just look around and learn about the scanner. And I don't know. That's what I've been doing with it.
Nice. I mean, I think that's a good use case because I was just talking with somebody about the the hype cycle. Have you all seen the graphs for the technology hype cycle?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Here, I'll share my screen here just for a sec so folks know what I'm talking about. But it's
Pretty simple. Goes up, 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 down, 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 down.
yeah, yeah. Well, but then it balances out. Here, I'll show you it. It's
And if you have any films, you
there it
can
is.
submit them for next year's film festival at Portland. There's that link in there for you.
Hmm.
Okay.
Nice. Um, but yeah, it's some technology, enters the public eye, and this is, VR, blockchain, AI, anything that's used as a buzzword, right? It enters the public consciousness. There's this like explosion of hype, right? Of everybody saying, "Oh, everybody's going to be using this. It's going to completely change how we do things." People start selling out billions of dollars to put it in other stuff, and fund startups that don't make any money, and then at a certain point, the bubble bursts, and it goes down into the trough of disillusionment, where everybody's like, "Oh, psh, blockchain, that was all hot air. That's nothing." Uh, but then after that, there's the slope of enlightenment, where people figure out, "Oh, this is what this technology is actually useful for." And then the plateau of productivity, where you just see a lot of kind of less like billion-dollar startups and more just regular businesses using the technology in ways that make sense. And I feel like that's where we're starting to get to with VR. I think AR is doing its own hype cycle right now with the smart glasses. Um, but with VR, I think we started to see a lot of places like using it for education, using it for training. I know Walmart for years has been using it to train their new recruits, because using VR for training is just way more effective than trying to sit people in front of a PowerPoint. Uh, and so I think that's in my mind where it's starting to get to. And I think, yeah, stuff like this, Dale, you're talking about with the Arizona, to me, it kind of falls into that of like, here's an expensive piece of equipment. It's hard to get access to it normally. VR is a really good way to get a lot of experience with it without disrupting the use of it. And it's a lot easier to buy somebody a VR headset for $300 than to make a new MRI for millions.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see VR kind of reach that stage, just as AI is now, I think, starting to get over the kind of peak of inflated expectations, and maybe drop into the trough of disillusionment. I'm starting to see the warning signs of that.
I'm seeing VR actually, I don't know. I use Supernatural almost every day, the exercise thing. And then
Hmm.
on top of that, they have this whole Facebook group. So we have the social thing going on and you can also do group exercise in Supernatural. So I do that sometimes. You've got that going on with a older set of adults, actually. It's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. I also just have a friend who, after I started using VR, started using it, and she's from Oregon, just met a whole bunch of people in those movie things. What's that called? Big Time, I think. I went in to watch some movies with them too. You can sit in the cinema and watch movies, bootlegged movies together. And she just flew to Chicago to meet a whole bunch of people. I thought it was interesting. And I hang out at the Target down here when I'm in New York, but kind of near the VR place, to talk to people who are looking at it and talking about it. And I was talking to one young man. I said, why do you like it? He's about maybe 10 or 11. He said, I find friends there
Hmm.
where he can't find friends other places. So I don't, it's interesting that I do exercise at about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning here in New York. So that's the time when the kids in England get out of school. And then I just bop into games because I'm just curious. Oh my God,
Hmm.
Squid Games. I just got killed. Like, lady, would you leave, please?
Oh, those
But I bop in,
10-year-olds are vicious. They will
but
destroy you and body and
it's okay. At
soul.
least they told me to leave. It's like they were nice about it. But what I'm saying is that we got a lot of young kids in there, and as someone who works in mental health, I'm like, what the heck are they doing unsupervised all over the place, right? I mean, some of the stuff they say is okay, but some of the stuff is like, whoa, right? Do you see any like in the future having any supervision?
I mean, this is a big deal because I don't know if you all have seen the latest hubbub with Roblox.
I was just going to bring that
Mhm.
up.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, go for it. You probably know more about it than I do.
No, not really. It's just between some of the, I don't know a lot about it. I know there's been some, people, some behavioral things and stuff with some of the users, but also from what little I know of Roblox, I don't like it because how financially predatory it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it's one of those things where yeah, you can, make your own game and sell it and earn money. And okay, but I think I was just watching a video on this, between the fact that they're basically paying you in company script, they pay you in Robux, which you can mostly only use to buy more stuff in Roblox. And if you want to
Mhm.
get it into cash, it's like for a $10 game, each sale you could cash out like $2 in actual US money to the creators, and the rest all goes to Roblox. And it's mostly, teenagers making content for it. It's kind of like a teenage company town with 400 million active users.
And I would be more into trying more of the accessible social VR things, but the couple that I've tried, I wouldn't even mind trying that Supernatural, but I think that's a subscription too. And the
I'll
problem
get you
is,
a free 30 days, Jesse.
okay,
As
but
soon as I can.
well,
Okay.
but to me though, the problem is a lot of those types of interfaces, because I've done like rhythm games in the past, and I've tried to do a couple social VR things, and they are not typically very legally blind friendly.
Hmm.
And so it's like I don't want to pay for something I can't read and interact with.
Right. So I don't know how much you can see or cannot see. Yeah, supernatural, you'd have to hit things coming at you. So I don't know if that's feasible or not
Well,
for you.
that part may not be as bad. It's really the funny thing for me, the hardest part is the UI around it, the menus, the settings screens, because the text could be far away, it could be small, and it could blend in. So there's a lot of things with the UI that um is where I often find I have the most trouble.
Well, there's a
Yeah, and
bunch of old people on it. I never heard that as a complaint. I see a lot of complaints on it, but that I haven't seen yet. So,
Mm.
Jesse, like I said, I'm happy to give you a free 30 days. You can try to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I said my vision is pretty terrible, so.
yeah, I know it's been interesting to see the progress on that in terms of, I know like PlayStation, I think, started doing a screen reader for their console UI, but I don't know if that ever made it into the actual game UI. I think that was a per app
Yeah.
thing, even when the platform starts semi supporting it.
Yeah, it's been actually a couple weeks since I've gone into it. I really thought about doing it the last few days, but didn't get around to it. Um Meta does have a rudimentary screen reader going in the Quest 3 now.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's just what I was thinking of. But I think it's as far as I know, they don't expose
Yeah,
it
it's
to the
not in
games,
game.
right?
That has to be on a game basis, just like
Yeah.
any console or PC game.
As opposed to a website where it kind of works by default somewhat. Somewhat.
Yeah, I haven't tried the web on it yet.
Yeah. Oh, Joseph, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to ask, and actually, this is for you, Dylan, related to this topic. I thought I heard or saw somewhere there was actually an association of XR developer, and the association is committed to developing accessible content. Did you by chance come across that group? I can't remember the name of the association. I saw a communication about it once, and there was a get together, and there seems to be a sort of a groundswell for this, where the developer was saying we need to ask from the developing point of view, right? From the very beginning, incorporate all the accessibilities to make XR content accessible, as opposed to going with the status quo. And I know in education that's always been difficult for us. Every time we want to get something, we always have to seek the CPAC and all of the regulatory documentation. But it seems like we always hit the brick wall with that, because many developer, because it's never been asked or required them in the past, they don't keep that in mind and develop for accessibility. So we actually have to basically turn away from a lot of products that we want to use just because of that. So, but I thought there was an organization that formed specifically for that purpose, is to encourage other developers to start incorporating accessibility features in their development.
So the thing that comes to mind for that is, just recently, I think it was announced at AWE this year, is the Accessible Games Initiative. And so this was something that is it's started by a group of kind of big devs, including EA, Google, Microsoft, a couple others, and then they kind of handed control over it to the Entertainment Software Association, and that is specifically a tagging. And so the idea is that in the same way that you could look at, a game gets a maturity label of like PG, PG-13, R, or maybe that's movies. But labels would let you know kind of whether it's appropriate for kids. These would make it more obvious whether games are appropriate for people with different types of disabilities. And so it lists out features, a game, if a game has something like narrated menus or difficulty levels or basic input remapping, um, you can kind of slap that sticker on there. And I think they're trying to remake their stores to showcase those so that it's a little easier to understand. But I think it's still primarily a labeling thing. I don't know how much of that is about really trying to uh it, I mean, I guess by doing so they're encouraging accessibility, but I don't know. There's nothing that immediately comes to mind of like a big group of developers pushing for accessibility outside of something like Able Gamers or, I mean, obviously we've been pushing for it for years, but um, we don't have that many, we don't have any developers on staff, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Um,
Great. Well, thank you for sharing this. This is
mhm.
good.
Yeah, and if I'll share it in case anybody here needs it. We have our XR Access GitHub that has a lot of the content that we've gathered that makes it easier for designers and developers to make their stuff accessible. Because we definitely believe that the more you don't have to reinvent the wheel from scratch, the easier it becomes to get people to actually incorporate accessibility.
Could I ask Joseph a question? Because my partner actually is in semiconductor manufacturing. So I wonder at that stage, what would you do to help make it more accessible at that very level? I'll ask him when he gets home, but I'm just kind of curious.
Oh, I was just wondering because we were talking about how, like for example, Dylan was talking about how Walmart had been using VR for training for a long time and because it was more effective. Uh, so I was just thinking, like in the old days when I was still in the high tech industry, I worked for AMD uh, in their fab that, and so it's a clean room environment, and we deal with all these high tech, chip manufacturing equipment, and so they go through a lot of training. Of course, that's way in when no one thought VR was a possibility. It would have cost you $50,000 for a headset, maybe. Um, you know, we do the traditional training. Here's a video. Watch this video. How you handle even a wafer, for example, or even a wafer wand, right? The handling mechanism is a big deal because you create particles every time you touch one of the wafers. Exactly. Even your garment and so on and so forth. Um, so but most folks don't get to experience that in the clean room, especially if they're still bringing up the facility. Like the situation I was in, they were finishing building the fab when I was in training, right? And so that's why I wonder is one of those environment where I can see where if you're actually in a VR environment that is the clean room, then you're more forced to go through the procedure that you need to go to when you're actually in the clean room than if you're just reading about it or watching an animation or a video talk about it, right? So again, it's one of those things where you're immersed, and so you believe what you're doing is what you're doing, and you actually get that experience. Because I will tell you that I've seen many of my coworkers. If I were in charge, I'd probably fire them all because they did not follow procedure. And again, it's one of those things where if you don't get to practice it, you don't internalize it, and you marginalize the criticalness of what you're doing is my perspective. Similar to what we do here when we actually do a workshop with our criminal justice department where it's a Saturday workshop, 6 hours, and we have our students, we introduce them first, we bring in our local police department, and the police will walk them through a couple of police response scenarios. Then we follow that with the criminal justice theory, and then we follow that up with our counseling program to talk about how you de-escalate and all of those, uh, what you should not do. And then we have an improv just to play out all those scenarios for students. But then I wrap it all up with our VR experience at the end because, and I can see it, at least my interpretation, when I watch the students observe the improv, they're just having a good old time because they think it's funny, right? Because these actors are acting out roles, but they're not really there. They don't have the same sense of, okay, this is a live death situation. It's more like we're having fun. So they don't take it seriously. But once they get into the VR and they experience, for example, a police raid on a homeless encampment, you can see their attitude just totally change, right? And you can see that it really affects them. So that's, again, to me, I feel like for some industry, and I would think that a high tech industry would be able to would make use of such technology because it's so natural to them. And I wonder why we don't hear case study. We hear about, let's say, Amazon or the Walmarts or the what I consider to be the soft tech as opposed to the high tech. I've not heard of a case where the high tech industry is using these to do training.
Well, Joseph, where are you located? I'm kind of curious too, just what's.
Actually, I'm with Texas A&M University, but the Corpus Christi campus. But prior to 2001, I worked in the tech industry, so it was the IBM, the AMDs, and such.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it is just that, you know, I think back in the start of the decade, there was like a lot of stories about these. It was more newsworthy, right? I think there were a lot of stories about companies using it for training and then abandoning it and then using it. And now, I mean, I know there's companies like I just put in the chat to the ones that we've worked with time on occasion, Transfer and Striver, both of which are too cool for the letter E, I think. But it's I
They're
think the
trying to
former
save
is
money and what's that game show, so they have to buy
yeah, Wheel
all.
of Fortune, save the cost of a vowel. Um, but I know the former one does kind of career exploration for students and like lets students try out all of, like these different roles, and then the latter is more specifically like enterprise workplace training. Um, and as far as I know, they both are still doing good business. They work with a lot of big companies. Like I know that I think Chase Bank was at one point using VR to simulate like for a teller, what do you do if there's a bank robbery? And they could give them training on that kind of thing. And I think we're in enterprise, it's finding its kind of the niches and settling into the cracks in places where it is useful. Um, and we just don't hear about it that much unless you're directly involved.
Would that be a plus to get it out there in the public, Dylan? If it is happening?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
probably so. I think we should it's one of the things on my infinite to-do list is to try to do another like survey of our partners in enterprise and see like, hey, so how are your VR programs going? Uh, and I'll put that I'll put that onto my to-do list. But no, I mean, I was again at AWE. I was watching a presentation on the use of AR in industry, and I mean, I'll dig up my notes from it. You can tell I'm a compulsive note taker. Um, they were saying that. Okay, yeah, here we go. I'll share my notes. I'll get the peeking over Dylan's shoulder AWE experience here. Um, Here we go. So this was 2025's top U.S. enterprise XR use cases by Lewis Ward from IDC Survey. And they were saying that, let me see if I can zoom in for y'all here. Zoom on this thing. Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, it was seeing a lot of use in, and this was the green bars are top three mixed reality. Light blue is Apple Vision Pro, and the dark blue is MetaQuest 3 and 3S. That was the kind of their main things they were comparing against each other. And there's a lot of use in professional, scientific, and technical services. I think this is percentage that use them, maybe. But yeah, professional, scientific, technical services, followed by manufacturing, construction, followed by kind of information services, healthcare and social assistance, and then retail trade. And I think if I'm right, and this is percentages, it was, something close to 70% of the companies surveyed in professional, scientific, and technical services say they were using it in some format or another. So I think, like I said, it is kind of percolating in there. So then they also had users on their enterprise, a lot of service-focused frontline workers, line of business manager, knowledge workers, IT people, etc. Share of all workers, 54% of MR users indicated that less than 5% of coworkers used MR in the previous month. So it's a relatively small portion of employees using headsets at each of these companies. It's not like every single person uses it on a daily basis. Two-thirds used on-device apps rather than something kind of piped in from outside the headset. Whoops, come on. Yeah, Apple Vision Pro is used more for 3D work, whereas the Quest was more for training purposes. Sample size. Oops, sorry, my OneNote does not like being in this magnification, I think. And then, yeah, it was more common for them to be using custom software than it was just buying things off the shelf. So I don't know. I could keep going through the rest of these if folks are interested, but I think the moral of the story is that it's like it does seem to be getting use in where it's useful. But so many of these are, custom enterprise software things that accessibility often doesn't enter into it as much because it's not something that the entire company needs to use. It's something that you're using this if, you are a designer or you are getting trained for a job and you need, in order to do that job, in order to be qualified for it, you kind of need to have those abilities anyway. And so it sounded, from what I was chatting with folks, it sounded like accessibility wasn't a priority for that reason. I think that's one of the things that makes it a lot different from educational use, where we're expecting every student should be able to use it. Yeah. Satisfaction. Anyhow. Yeah, because that brings me up one of the other things I was going to bring up earlier is there's a great talk at another talk at AWE because it was one of the major conferences I attended this year, where there was somebody from the Laramie County Community College that was talking with a consultant from a group called Chocolate Milk and Donuts, and they'd done it as a uh, case study on use in community spaces of how can you use it effectively in schools, where they were talking about a lot of techniques in terms of rather than buying a headset for every student, you just have a cart of VR headsets that's managed by the library, and then different teachers can request it at different times, so you have a lot more efficiency. You have the idea that people can take the headsets home and learn how to use them and become champions. Thanks for joining, Joseph. Um, they had, I think I'll see if I can find the, yeah, here it is. Building immersive learning ecosystems, a blueprint for scalable implementation. Just a lot of stuff on why most VR pilot programs tend to fail and what they did that made it more successful. So it's one of those things where I think getting actual use out of it is we're still even learning, even for the perfect situation where everybody is able-bodied and neurotypical. It's still challenging to actually deploy it in a way that's helpful and consistently useful. And when you put in accessibility as another challenge, it gets that much more challenging.
I don't know anything that's consistently useful in
Yeah,
any
exactly.
realm, Dylan. So that's a high order to reach.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's something I've been thinking about. I did a talk recently with EduCause, which is or they're specifically the EduCause community IT group, which is basically a whole bunch of IT managers from different universities trying to figure out uh, whether this stuff is accessible or not, or what to look for when they're procuring it. And so I put together kind of a checklist of like, here's some of the low-hanging fruit, or things that not even low-hanging fruit, but like things that have been done that have been demonstrated in things like, say, Cosmonius High. I put in a couple of references there because good subtitles, for example, are one of those things that somehow people seem to have just forgotten how to do at all in the transit from 2D, let alone doing it in ways that are good in XR and don't make your head spin from convergence accommodation conflicts. But yeah, having a list, I think another thing on my infinite to-do list is to make like a nice guide of those, of saying like, hey, here is a list of features that you should ask for from the people making your educational software because they can be done, and therefore they should be done. And then from there, like here is experimental features that haven't really been done in any commercial software, but if you wanted to make it accessible to people who are fully blind, for example, here's how you do it. And we'd reference things like the scene weaving that Microsoft demonstrated before that team got laid off. In a perfect world, we'd also have open source code for all of these, but as soon as I can have the Dosh to hire a team of developers, we'll get right on that.
Well, I'm talking a lot, but I'll just bring this up. So I'm
Yeah.
starting my master's in immersive technologies at the University of Oregon in a month. And they have a lab in Portland. It's also actually in the old university where I used to teach ESL. It's kind of funny. It's in the same building, the same space where I used to teach. They've revamped it now into but I'm going to ask them if they have accessible stuff and if any of the students need accessibility. I don't think they've even gotten there yet. So I think the program's only like 2 or 3 years old. But I'll look for that, Dylan. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll see if I can spin off if probably not the either a copy of the presentation that I gave to EDUCAUSE or just maybe a checklist of things. If you look in the GitHub, I think one of the very first things we've got in there is the XR Association um, Developers Guide, Chapter 3. And this came out a couple of years ago, but it's still, I think very relevant. And they give some very good kind of checklists of things that things to look for that makes it more accessible. So you can download a copy of that and hand it to them and say, hey, how many of these can you say you've got? That could be good. But it's so tricky because so much of this needs to be done at by either the platform owners or by the developers. Oftentimes there's the lab can try to choose who they're procuring from, but there's there's so few apps out there that are accessible, and I don't think any of them that are accessible in every way at once, that it gets real tricky. And it's requires a lot of coordination across levels. Here it is. Yeah, here I'll share my slide deck, and nobody wants to reference from it. You're welcome to. Just ask that you give credit. Yes. Oh, one of the things I remember what I wanted to ask folks here about is I've been doing a lot of research on AI recently, specifically uh, retrieval augmented generation, RAG, which is a form of AI that is rather than, you ask the language model a question and it just kind of bullshits an answer that sounds plausible from amongst its entire training data. It's a way to say, hey, only take answers from like these 5 documents that I'm about to give you. And then you ask it a question and it pulls out related concepts from those documents and kind of related things and feeds them to tells you, well, based on this document, you could do this. Based on that document, you could do that. Um, and I have been thinking it'd be very convenient to put one of those together for kind of XR accessibility. I experimented a little bit with Google Notebook, which is kind of a free one of these, but I'm curious if anybody on the call has a lot of experience with that, or if there's anything that if you could have something that was kind of searchable in plain language rather than having to do a control F for specific terminology. If there's things that folks think would be useful for.
If I remember correctly, I think Claude focuses a little bit more on like giving actual sources instead of just like seemingly pulling things out of midair. I think Claude is the model that does more like shows its research or so shows its work more.
Hmm. Yeah, that's kind of been my instinct. I haven't done a lot of testing with the different models, but I feel like Claude, I mean, I've seen some of the videos that Anthropic puts out on how do we make sure AI isn't uh, killing us all, in one way or another. I think they've tend to be somewhat more responsible compared to some of the other ones, although you know there's still inherent issues.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'll have to look. Yeah, if I end up building one, I'll probably be looking at them first for as a source. Oh yeah, Jasmine, that'd be awesome because I'd love to make something that is controllable, by us and not just like at Google's whims. So now there are things like Olama, uh, which, if y'all haven't heard it, is a basically open source models. Oh, yeah, that could be very good. Um, Open source models where you can just download it. It downloads a couple of gigabytes, and then you can just run an AI on your computer without even being connected to the internet at all. And so I was thinking if it's possible to make a kind of self-contained RAG using like that and those sources that you want to use, and just train it to say like to pull out specific things from those sources and in response to questions. That'd be really cool because I think it's one thing to use AI to help like write an article about something, but it's another to make a kind of chatbot available that's rather than just our tossing our GitHub and people and saying, hey, the answer is somewhere in here. Um, to be able to have a bot that you can answer questions using the resources in that, for example, and just say, oh, you want to know about subtitles? Well, in this resource, there's this stuff about subtitles, and link straight to it, as opposed to making you dig through the whole thing. That seems like it'd potentially be a way to help people get a lot more use out of it. But
I
I don't.
don't know I don't know what service they use to build it, but one really sort of niche website that has been pretty helpful in my field has been the FS Companion website. I think it's just
Hmm,
fscompanion.ai. And what it does basically is it kind of does exactly what you're talking about, but they feed it. I think it only pulls in really from Freedom Scientific's documentation, but then they've also added a lot of things from Microsoft, so Microsoft Windows, Office, that kind of a thing. And I think if I remember correctly, they fairly recently just added some things for Google. So you can ask like, Freedom Scientific, they make like JAWS and they bought Zoom Text a few years ago. But it's kind of neat because, instead of having to look for the manual of how to use a certain command or whatever, how to do some procedure, you can ask it, anything from specific assistive technology commands to, oh, how do I set the automatic replies in Outlook when I'm on vacation next week? And it not only will it guide you through the process, but it's geared toward blind and low vision users in this case. So it's not necessarily going to give you just click this, click that. It'll tell you the keyboard shortcuts and menus that you have to find to get there. And so they
Nice.
integrate like things like Microsoft, Google, and their products. And I hope they expand it to more mainstream products too, because I find that to be really pretty helpful.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to see how they're training that, because they must have their
I know
own
they
documentation
pull,
that has all the keyboard shortcuts in, right?
well, yeah, and I know they pull from their own documentation. So all of their, whether it's web, I don't know if they pull in from their websites, but they have user manuals, they have, quick start guides, keyboard reference sheets, all of those things. But I know they grab, I don't know, I think they're working with, other companies, be it like Microsoft or Google, to get their documents. So it's not just going out on the web. And like if I were to look up, I don't know, probably like Adobe or something, it wouldn't know because it doesn't have that in their database.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm asking it right now, like, does JAWS work with the Steam video game store? Curious to see what it says.
Huh. Oh, I would be curious too, actually.
Uh, it says it's designed to work well with many popular applications and web browsers. However, there's no specific mention of support for the Steam video game store in the official JAWS documentation. So yeah, it seems like it's mostly built just to answer questions based on that documentation, which is good. I think that's what we want. We don't want something that's
Right,
going to
right. And that's why I said I'm
go
not sure
rogue
what
and
model they're
generate
using
nonsense.
for that, to do that, what it's based off of.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, because it does add, if you need to use Steam, it's recommended to try accessing the Steam website, store.steampower.com, in a web browser with JAWS, as this may offer better accessibility than the desktop app. If you have specific tasks you want to accomplish in Steam, please let me know and I can provide guidance or alternative suggestions. Interesting.
Hmm. And I know, yeah, and I know that probably will have to be updated too. That's the downside, is they may have to make sure that the information is current. Because as of, when June, when they started adding the screen reader to the Steam Deck and Steam OS, they're also talking about, I haven't gotten around to playing with it yet, but playing with Steam in big picture mode, and it's supposed to work a little bit better natively on Windows now if you use it in big picture mode.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know one of the benefits of RAG is that, for normal AI, like when you get all the training data together and then you train it, and that is a very computationally expensive process, right? Um, and so once they were like release a model, you don't want to tweak that model because every time you do, you have to, drain a lake to run all the chips to do it. Um, but for RAG, you can change stuff in the database, and every time somebody does a new query, it can recheck the database. And the limitation of that is that it only works up to a certain size of database. Once you start putting too many, if you have
Oh,
300 sources you're trying to have it referenced, then it needs to kind of dig through those every time it answers a question. Um, but for relatively small numbers of sources, you can update the
right,
sources and you don't need to update the chatbot.
right. Oh, you don't have to update the model, just you can update the sources. Gotcha. Interesting. I keep thinking we should do something like that for our agency with all the you know, the state government and vocational rehabilitation and blindness stuff. And God, there's all kinds of crap we could put in one. We
Yeah,
had,
yeah. No, that's what I've kind of been thinking about is it seems like it'd be very useful for a lot of small organizations to just be able to whip up a RAG model that can answer questions.
yeah, what is the website for that? Because I should almost look into that myself for our
Uh,
organization.
well, the one I've been using just as a kind of easy mode so far is Google Notebook LM, um,
Mm-hmm.
which lets you, upload either websites or PDFs or whatever. It's been very useful for research where, I want to put in 10 different scientific papers. I've
Yeah.
been using it to help me write the symposium report because I can put in all the transcripts and the descriptions, and then say, okay, write a basic summary of this event, or of this panel,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can take that and use it as a basis to edit. Uh,
The creepiest part of that is I haven't played a lot with Notebook LM, but I did feed it like a video one time just to see because I remember a lot of people were talking about it for a little while.
mhm.
Have you ever had it generate a podcast based on something?
Yeah, that
That
is
is so
wild.
weird.
It's kind
That
of
is so
creepy.
weird.
Yeah, for people who haven't tried it, you can upload just a bunch of different resources and say generate podcast, and we'll make this fake podcast between two fake people,
Yeah,
uh, just
I did that for one of my videos.
talking about the stuff you uploaded and kind of breaking out the salient points, and it is surreal.
It really is. I made it, I gave it a link for one of my presentation videos and it did a podcast of it. And it was cool, but kind of weird and
Oh, did it
creepy. And
did it break down the video? Is that just using the transcript or?
no, it literally, all I did is I gave it a YouTube link for the video and it took probably like 5 minutes to process it. And then it just came back and made a podcast about it, and they were summarizing what I was doing, and it was kind of funny. I'll have to send you
Wow.
a link.
Yeah, yeah, I'm very curious because I'm curious whether they just use the transcript for that or if it's actually analyzing the video itself, because that seems like it would take a lot more than 5 minutes.
Uh, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me see if I can find that
Mm.
video.
Well, anyway, I do want to note we're coming up on our hour here. I think our next one should be we've set it for the fourth Monday of the month, and that looks to be September 22nd. So if people have ideas for things that we should discuss ahead of time for that one, like we were talking at the beginning of this meeting, it might be nice to put things out ahead of time that we want to chat about. So it's not just like come talk about something, we'll figure it out. Uh, Definitely feel free to email to me or just post in our Slack. I'll post our Slack for anybody who's here. We will be at some point soon moving to a Discord. Uh, but until then, use the Slack. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining. We'll be putting we put the notes and the videos from these we add them to our the ongoing thing. So if you think anybody would be interested in this and missed it, feel free to point them towards that. But otherwise, we'll see everybody again on September 22nd.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining all.
Thank you.
You.